Let us have an honest conversation about a topic that might be uncomfortable to face but is crucial for your well-being as you age. The decision to live close to your children in your later years, while seemingly natural and comforting, could be one of the most significant missteps you might ever take. We say this not to alarm you, but to guide you in reflecting deeply on a choice that could shape the remainder of your life in ways you might not fully anticipate. Imagine a man named John. John had lived a full life, worked hard, raised a family, and cherished his independence. As he approached retirement, John began to feel the pull of family more strongly. His 2 children had settled into their own lives, busy with their careers and raising their young families. John, feeling the weight of solitude creeping in, made the decision to move closer to his eldest son, Michael, thinking it would provide him with the comfort of being near his loved ones. At first, it seemed like a dream come true. John was a mere 15-minute drive away from Michael's home. He found joy in the little things, dropping by for dinner, attending his grandchildren's soccer games, and being able to share in the day-to-day lives of his family. It felt like a return to the warmth and closeness of the days when his children were young. But as the months rolled on, something subtle began to shift. John noticed that his once treasured independence was being replaced by a quiet dependency. He started relying on Michael for small favors, fixing things around his new home, helping with errands, and even making decisions about his finances. What had once been a life of self-reliance was slowly becoming one where he leaned heavily on his son. On the other side, Michael began to feel the pressure too. He loved his father deeply, but he couldn't help but notice how his time and energy were increasingly being drawn into his father's needs. What had started as a few small favors turned into a steady stream of requests, and Michael began to feel the strain. He found himself juggling his own responsibilities with the added weight of caring for his father. The visits that were once a joy started to feel like an obligation. One evening, after another exhausting day, Michael sat down with his wife to discuss the growing tension. "I love Dad, but I feel like I'm being pulled in too many directions. I never expected this to be so hard," he admitted. His wife, who had also noticed the shift, gently suggested that perhaps it was time for a conversation with John about setting some boundaries. When Michael approached John about the situation, it was a difficult conversation. John hadn't realized how much he had come to depend on his son, and hearing it was like a mirror being held up to his face. He felt a pang of guilt, not because he had intended to burden his son, but because he had lost sight of the man he used to be, the one who prided himself on standing tall and handling his own affairs. In the days that followed, John did some serious soul-searching. He recognized that in his desire for closeness, he had inadvertently created a situation where both he and his son were losing the very things that made their relationship strong: mutual respect and autonomy. John began to understand that the love he had for his family didn't require him to be physically close at all times. Instead, it called for him to maintain his independence, to be someone his son could still look up to, rather than someone who was constantly in need. So, John made a decision. He chose to move to a quieter town, a little further away, where he could regain his sense of independence. He found a community of like-minded individuals, made new friends, and re-established his life. This distance didn't weaken his bond with Michael. In fact, it strengthened it. The visits became more meaningful, the conversations richer, and the respect between them was restored. John's story serves as a powerful reminder that love and closeness in a family don't always mean physical proximity. Sometimes, maintaining a healthy distance is the key to preserving the relationships we cherish most. It allows us to keep our independence, to continue growing as individuals, and to interact with our loved ones from a place of strength and respect rather than dependency. Consider, too, the impact this decision could have on your children. While they might initially welcome the idea of having you nearby, the reality of constant proximity can weigh heavily on them. Your presence, though cherished, might inadvertently pressure them to prioritize your needs over their own, creating a sense of obligation that could strain their emotional resources. They may feel torn between their responsibility to you and the demands of their own lives, leading to stress, resentment, and a fractured relationship that neither of you intended. Let us share with you a story about a man named Daniel, a man who, like many others, found himself at a crossroads in his later years. Daniel was a kind soul, someone who had spent the majority of his life providing for his family, nurturing his children with unwavering dedication. As he approached retirement, the thought of moving closer to his grown children seemed like a logical choice. He believed that being near them would bring comfort and strengthen the bonds they had always shared. However, Daniel did not fully grasp how this decision would reverberate through both his life and theirs. Initially, Daniel's decision was met with warmth and excitement. His children were delighted to have him nearby, eager to share more time together and to ensure he was well cared for in his old age. The early days were filled with shared meals, laughter, and a sense of closeness that seemed to reaffirm Daniel's choice. But as the months passed, something began to shift. The constant closeness, which had once seemed like a blessing, began to reveal its complexities. Daniel, without intending to, started to rely more heavily on his children. His daily routines began to revolve around their availability, his social interactions dwindling as he became more dependent on their company. He found himself retreating from activities he once enjoyed, slowly losing the sense of autonomy that had defined his earlier years. The vibrant, independent man who had once embraced life's challenges began to fade, replaced by someone who felt increasingly tethered to his children's lives. On the other hand, Daniel's children, though they loved him deeply, started to feel the weight of his constant presence. What began as a joyful reunion gradually turned into a source of stress. They found themselves juggling their own responsibilities, careers, families, personal aspirations, while also trying to accommodate their father's needs. The pressure to ensure his well-being grew, leading to moments of quiet frustration and exhaustion. They never voiced these feelings, but the strain was palpable, a silent undercurrent that began to erode the ease and joy of their interactions. Daniel's daughter, Lily, who had always been particularly close to him, began to notice the subtle changes in their relationship. She saw how her father's once vibrant spirit seemed diminished, how he hesitated to pursue new interests or seek out new friendships. Lily also recognized the toll it was taking on her own life, how her time and energy were being stretched thin, how she felt torn between being a supportive daughter and fulfilling her own needs. One evening, after a particularly long day, Lily sat down with her father for a heartfelt conversation. She spoke with gentleness and love, but also with the honesty that their situation demanded. "Dad," she began, "I love having you close, but I can see that this isn't working the way we thought it would. You need to have your own life, just like I need to have mine. We can still be close without being in each other's lives every day. You deserve to live fully, to find joy and purpose, not just be here waiting for the next time we can get together." Daniel listened, her words resonating deeply within him. He realized that in his desire to remain close to his children, he had unwittingly placed limits on his own life and by extension on theirs. He had always seen himself as their protector, their guide, but now he understood that the best way to continue in that role was to show them that life, even in its later stages, could be rich with growth and new experiences. After much reflection, Daniel made a choice that would transform the remainder of his years. He decided to move to a nearby town, not far enough to lose touch, but far enough to give everyone the space they needed to thrive. In this new environment, Daniel rediscovered parts of himself that he had long neglected. He found a new circle of friends, engaged in community activities, and even took up painting, a passion he had set aside years ago. These pursuits reignited a spark in Daniel, reminding him that life still had so much to offer. As Daniel embraced his new life, something remarkable happened in his relationship with his children. The distance allowed them all to breathe, to grow independently while still maintaining a deep connection. When they did come together, the time was filled with genuine enjoyment, free from the subtle strains that had previously clouded their interactions. Daniel's renewed sense of purpose became a source of inspiration for his children, showing them that aging did not have to mean withdrawing from life, but could instead be a time of continued discovery and fulfillment. Daniel's story serves as a powerful reminder that while the desire to stay close to our loved ones is natural, we must also consider the broader implications. By maintaining our independence and pursuing our own interests, we not only enrich our own lives but also allow our relationships to flourish in a healthier, more balanced way. We teach our children that life is a journey of ongoing growth, that even as we age, we have the capacity to explore, to learn, to contribute meaningfully to the world around us. In the end, Daniel found that the decision to live apart, while difficult, was the best thing he could have done for both himself and his children. It allowed him to reclaim his sense of self, to live a life that was full and vibrant, and to set an example for his family that aging is not a time to retreat but a time to continue moving forward, with courage and curiosity. And in doing so, he strengthened the bonds with his children, not through proximity, but through mutual respect and admiration, creating a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. Another point to consider is how living close to your children could inadvertently limit their own growth. When you are constantly available, they may rely on you in ways that prevent them from developing their own solutions to life's challenges. By being nearby, you might unintentionally create a crutch for them, hindering their ability to fully step into their roles as independent adults. It's important to remember that part of your role as a parent is to let go, to allow your children the freedom to make their own choices, and sometimes, to learn from their own mistakes. Now, let us tell you a story about a man named Paul. Paul was a thoughtful and loving father, always there for his children, always ready to offer advice or lend a hand. After years of working hard, he retired and decided to move closer to his son Mark. It seemed like the right choice, a way to stay connected, to be a part of his grandchildren's lives, and to support his son in any way he could. But what Paul didn't realize was that his proximity would begin to have unintended consequences. At first, everything seemed perfect. Paul would drop by Mark's house regularly, helping with little tasks around the house, offering advice on parenting, and even stepping in when Mark and his wife needed a break. But as time went on, something subtle began to shift. Mark started to rely on Paul more and more, often deferring decisions to his father or asking for help with things he used to handle on his own. It wasn't long before Paul noticed that Mark's confidence in his own abilities was waning. One day, Paul found himself fixing a broken fence in Mark's backyard. As he worked, he realized that Mark was inside, watching television, seemingly unconcerned about the task at hand. This small moment struck Paul deeply. He remembered when Mark would have tackled such a job with enthusiasm, eager to prove his capability. But now, with Paul so close and so available, Mark had grown comfortable with letting his father take care of things. Paul started to wonder if he had made a mistake by moving so close. He loved being near his family, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his presence was becoming a burden rather than a blessing. He noticed that their conversations had become routine, lacking the depth and connection they once had. The specialness of their time together seemed to have faded, replaced by a sense of obligation and familiarity that dulled the joy they used to share. This realization led Paul to reflect on the Stoic principles he had studied in his younger years. He remembered the importance of non-attachment, the idea that one should not cling too tightly to the familiar or the comfortable, for doing so could hinder both his own growth and that of others. Paul began to see that by staying so close, he was not only holding Mark back but also limiting his own potential to explore new experiences and find fulfillment in his later years. Paul decided to have a candid conversation with Mark. He explained his concerns, sharing his observations and his worries that by being too close, he was preventing Mark from fully stepping into his own role as a father and a man. Mark listened, surprised but understanding. He hadn't realized how much he had come to rely on his father, nor had he noticed the subtle ways their relationship had changed. Together, they made a plan. Paul would move a little further away, not far, but just enough to give both of them the space they needed. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was a necessary one. Paul knew that by creating this distance, he was giving Mark the opportunity to grow, to become more independent, and to deepen his own relationships with his family. The move brought about a surprising transformation. Paul found himself exploring new hobbies, meeting new people, and rediscovering passions that had been set aside during the busy years of parenthood. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and vitality that he hadn't experienced in a long time. And when he visited Mark, their time together was filled with the warmth and connection that had once seemed lost. They had deeper conversations, shared stories, and laughed more than they had in years. Mark, too, began to flourish. He took on more responsibilities at home, grew more confident in his decisions, and started to lead his family with a quiet strength that had been there all along, just waiting for the space to emerge. The distance, rather than weakening their bond, had strengthened it in ways neither of them had expected. Through this experience, Paul came to understand the wisdom in letting go, not just for the sake of his children, but for himself as well. He learned that sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your loved ones is the freedom to grow, to make their own choices, and to learn from their own mistakes. And in doing so, you also grant yourself the freedom to continue growing, exploring, and finding joy in the unfolding chapters of your own life. It's also worth considering how this decision aligns with your long-term goals and values. Ask yourself, what kind of life do you envision for yourself in the years to come? What principles do you hold closest to your heart? If autonomy, self-improvement, and the relentless quest for wisdom are among these principles, then perhaps living near your children isn't the most harmonious choice with the path you've chosen. Instead, you may find that a bit of space allows you to live more authentically, in a way that truly reflects the values that have shaped your journey thus far. Allow us to tell you about someone who once faced a similar crossroads. His name was Marcus, a name as straightforward as the life he chose to lead. But don't let the simplicity of his name fool you. His life was anything but ordinary. Marcus was a man of deep reflection, someone who had spent much of his life in pursuit of wisdom. The teachings of the Stoics had been his compass, guiding him through the many challenges and triumphs that life had thrown his way. As Marcus reached the later stages of his life, he began to contemplate his next steps with the same thoughtful consideration that had characterized his earlier years. He had 2 children, both of whom were living in cities far from where he had built his life. They loved him dearly and often suggested that he move closer to them, reasoning that it would be easier for them to care for him as he aged. It was a tempting offer. After all, who wouldn't want to be near their loved ones during the twilight of their life? But Marcus, true to his nature, did not rush into a decision. He knew that moving closer to his children could have certain advantages, but he also recognized the potential pitfalls. He had always been a man who valued his independence, someone who took pride in his ability to stand on his own. The thought of becoming too reliant on his children troubled him. Marcus wanted to continue living a life that reflected the values he had held dear for so long. Values that emphasized self-reliance, continuous learning, and personal growth. He took time to weigh his options carefully. What kind of man did he want to be in his later years? Marcus wanted to be someone who remained true to himself, who did not compromise his principles for the sake of convenience or comfort. He realized that living too close to his children might inadvertently lead him to a life that was not his own, a life where his decisions were shaped more by their proximity than by his own desires and aspirations. Moreover, Marcus understood the importance of maintaining his identity in the eyes of his children. By living a bit further away, he allowed them to see him not just as their father, but as an individual with his own interests, passions, and pursuits. This distance helped preserve a sense of respect and admiration in their relationship, enriching the time they spent together and making their interactions more meaningful. Of course, the decision was not without its challenges. Marcus was not immune to the fears that often accompany aging: the fear of loneliness, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not having anyone to lean on in times of need. These are fears that many of us grapple with as we get older, and they are not to be taken lightly. But Marcus had spent his life cultivating a mindset that was not easily swayed by fear. He knew that allowing these fears to dictate his choices would be a disservice to the man he had worked so hard to become. Instead, Marcus sought out ways to address these fears without compromising his values. He made a conscious effort to build a robust community around him, people who shared his interests and values, who could offer companionship and support without the complexities that might arise from living too close to his children. He nurtured friendships that were based on mutual respect and understanding, friendships that enriched his life and provided him with a sense of belonging. In addition to this, Marcus committed himself to leading an active and engaged life. He pursued new hobbies, joined groups that piqued his interest, and continued his lifelong passion for learning. These activities not only kept him physically and mentally sharp, but they also provided him with a sense of purpose and fulfillment that did not depend on his children's proximity. As the years went by, Marcus noticed something remarkable happening. His relationship with his children grew stronger, not because they saw each other every day, but because the time they did spend together was filled with deep respect and genuine connection. They admired him not just as their father, but as a man who had chosen to live his life with integrity, who had remained true to his values even in the face of uncertainty. Marcus's story is a powerful reminder that our later years are not a time to abandon the principles that have guided us throughout our lives. Rather, they are an opportunity to double down on those principles, to live even more authentically and intentionally. For some, this might mean choosing to live near family, but for others, like Marcus, it might mean maintaining a bit of distance to preserve the independence and personal growth that have always been central to their identity. In the end, Marcus lived a life that was a testament to his values, and in doing so, he left his children with a legacy far greater than any material inheritance. He gave them the gift of witnessing a life lived with purpose, a life that did not compromise on its principles, a life that was rich in wisdom and fulfillment. And that, perhaps, is the most enduring gift one can offer to those we love. We understand that making the decision to live further away from your children might feel counterintuitive, even heart-wrenching. But remember, true love is not about physical proximity. It's about respect, understanding, and the freedom to live your own life while supporting those you love in living theirs. By choosing to live a little further away, you are not distancing yourself from your family. You are giving both yourself and your children the space to grow, to thrive, and to build relationships that are based on quality rather than quantity. Let us tell you a story then, one you might find yourself reflected in. It's about a man named Leo. Leo was a man of quiet strength, a father who had spent most of his life working hard to provide for his family. He had raised his children with care, instilling in them values of independence, resilience, and kindness. But as he grew older, He faced a choice that many parents confront. Where should he live during his retirement years? His children, now grown and with families of their own, lived in a nearby city. They wanted him to move closer, to be more present in their daily lives. Leo, though, was torn. He loved his children deeply, but he had always cherished his solitude and the small, peaceful town where he had lived for decades. The idea of leaving behind the place that held so many memories, where he had spent years cultivating a life of simplicity and contentment, felt like a sacrifice too great to make. Yet, he didn't want to seem distant or uncaring. He feared that by choosing to stay in his town, he might appear to be withdrawing from his children's lives, that they might think he no longer valued their company. But Leo was a man who believed in the wisdom of thoughtful reflection. He knew that decisions made in haste or out of guilt often led to regret. So he took his time. He walked through the familiar streets of his town, visited the old park where he had watched his children play, and sat by the quiet river where he had often found peace. He asked himself what truly mattered, not just for the present, but for the years to come. In his reflections, Leo realized something important. His love for his children was not diminished by distance. In fact, the moments they shared together, though less frequent, were rich with meaning precisely because they were intentional. When they visited him, there was a sense of anticipation and joy that might not have been the same had they seen each other every day. The time apart gave each visit a sense of purpose, of specialness that would be hard to maintain if they lived in each other's pockets. Leo also understood that by staying in his town, he was honoring the life he had built for himself, a life that had shaped the man he was. It wasn't about rejecting his children or refusing their offer of closeness. It was about maintaining his own identity, continuing to be the person who had taught his children the value of independence in the first place. He knew that if he gave up that part of himself, he might become someone else, someone who relied on his children more than he wanted to, someone who might inadvertently place the burden of his happiness on them. And so, Leo made his decision. He would stay. But he didn't do it in isolation. He sat down with his children and explained his choice. He spoke from the heart, not just about his love for them, but about his need to remain true to himself. He reassured them that this decision didn't mean he didn't want to be part of their lives. Instead, it was a way for him to remain the father they had always known, a man who was strong, independent, and thoughtful. His children, though initially disappointed, came to understand and respect his decision. They saw that by choosing to stay in his town, Leo was not choosing distance but rather depth in his own life and in the moments they would share. They continued to visit him, and those visits were filled with laughter, stories, and the comfort of knowing that their father was living the life he wanted. In turn, Leo found that by maintaining his independence, he had more to give during these visits. He was fully present, not weighed down by a sense of sacrifice or unspoken resentment. Over time, this arrangement brought a new kind of closeness. His children saw Leo not just as their father, but as a person who had made a wise and courageous choice. They admired him for it, and in that admiration, their respect for him deepened. Leo, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He continued to live his life with the same quiet strength that had always defined him, knowing that he had made the right choice not just for himself but for his family. Leo's story is a reminder that living further away from your children doesn't mean living apart from them. It means living a life that honors both your needs and theirs. It means trusting in the bonds you've built over a lifetime, bonds that are strong enough to withstand physical distance. And most importantly, it means understanding that love is not measured by how often you see someone, but by how deeply you cherish the moments you do share. Choosing to live your life on your terms doesn't mean choosing to live it alone. It means embracing the freedom to be who you are, even as you continue to love and support those you hold dear. And in that freedom, you'll find not just independence but a deeper, more enduring connection with your loved ones. A connection that transcends distance and thrives on mutual respect and understanding. By reconsidering your living situation, you could transform your quality of life in ways you never thought possible. As we delve into the complexities of deciding where to spend your later years, particularly the idea of living close to your children, it's essential to recognize that what seems like a simple choice can carry profound implications for both your personal freedom and the dynamics within your family. The allure of being nearby to offer support and to remain an integral part of your children's lives is understandable, yet this well-meaning decision can lead to unexpected consequences that may undermine the very sense of fulfillment you seek in your golden years. It's crucial to remember that the essence of a fulfilling life, especially as we age, lies in the ability to maintain our independence, to continue growing, and to cultivate a sense of purpose that is not solely defined by our proximity to our loved ones. Living too close to your children can subtly, yet significantly, impact your sense of autonomy. The convenience of having family nearby may initially seem comforting, but over time, it can create a dynamic where your life becomes overly intertwined with theirs. This can lead to a gradual loss of the independence you've worked so hard to maintain throughout your life. Your decisions, routines, and even your aspirations may start to revolve around your children's schedules and needs, rather than being driven by your own desires and interests. The once vibrant life you envisioned for your retirement years can slowly become one of quiet dependency, where the lines between mutual support and over-reliance blur. In the end, this can diminish not only your sense of self, but also the quality of your relationships with your children. From the Stoic perspective, which emphasizes the importance of living according to one's values and maintaining inner tranquility, it becomes clear that preserving your personal space is essential. By choosing to live a bit farther from your children, you create an environment where both you and they can thrive independently. This distance allows you to remain engaged in your own pursuits, to continue exploring your passions, and to contribute to the world in a way that reflects your true self. It also gives your children the space to live their lives without feeling the pressure of constant proximity. This arrangement fosters a healthier relationship, where the time spent together is genuinely appreciated, filled with warmth and affection, rather than being overshadowed by the potential strains of daily interactions. Moreover, it's important to recognize that the later years of your life are not merely a time to retreat into the background, but rather an opportunity to further enrich your legacy. By living independently, you give yourself the chance to engage with new communities, to pursue hobbies that you might not have explored before, and to continue growing in ways that are personally meaningful. Your legacy isn't confined to the role you play within your family. It's also about the impact you have on the world around you, the wisdom you impart, and the life you lead with purpose and intention. When you maintain your independence, you set an example for your children and others that life, at any stage, is meant to be lived fully and authentically. In the grand scheme of things, choosing to live apart from your children doesn't mean you're distancing yourself emotionally. On the contrary, it allows the relationship to flourish in a more balanced and respectful way. The physical space between you can enhance the emotional closeness, making your interactions more meaningful and reducing the risk of conflict or resentment that can arise from constant proximity. It's about understanding that true love and support don't require you to be physically near at all times. Rather, they are rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and the freedom to live as individuals. By making this choice, you protect your own well-being and contribute to the overall harmony of your family. As we conclude this reflection, we encourage you to deeply consider the implications of your living situation as you age. The choice to live independently from your children is not about creating distance, but about fostering a life where both you and they can thrive. By valuing your own independence, you enhance the quality of your relationships and ensure that your later years are filled with growth, purpose, and joy. If you found this discussion helpful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights that empower you to live a life aligned with your deepest values and desires. We're committed to bringing you thoughtful content that helps you navigate life's challenges with wisdom and grace.